Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these things can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending these assets? Have you penetration tested these public assets? Start 2017 by taking a proactive approach to securing your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com and see how they can help you sleep better at night. Welcome back, everyone. A couple of quick announcements. Wild West Hackin' Fest, October 27th through the 28th, put on by Black Hills Information Security. All kinds of awesome speakers in the security community will be there. WildWestHackinFest.com, HACKIN Fest.com. B-Sides Uganda, B-Sides Kampala, rather, the first B-Sides in Uganda was, the CFP is now closed by tonight. So by the time you hear this, it will be closed. You can find out more information and keep tabs on who will be speaking on which topics at bsideskampala.com. And I'd like to welcome our friends at Domain Tools. I've actually been talking a little bit about their products and solutions. Fantastic organization. Whether they're phishing or hacking or spying, threat actors use domains and IP addresses to launch their attacks. Your ability to map and characterize an attacker's infrastructure is crucial to defending yourself. Join Domain Tools Senior Security Researcher Kyle Wilhoit and Director of Product Management Tim Helming on a virtual ride-along using Domain Tools Iris. They use real-world cases to show you how you can quickly and efficiently expose the adversary's infrastructure. Go to domaintools.com/Security Weekly. Register today. You will not be disappointed. They have been collecting information about domains and IP addresses for a really long time and do a fantastic job. So, Michael, how you doing? Let's talk security startups.
Yeah, so here's what I did this week. I shortened the stories because I don't know if you noticed, Paul, but holy cow. I mean, for the week, acquisitions, funding rounds, there's one in there I can't wait to talk about because it's absolutely baffling to me. So it's what a week and all the stuff we have going on. Let's start with some stories because I cherry picked. These three are three worth coming to the wiki and checking out. First one, 5 questions brands need to answer to be customer first in the digital age. We know I like questions. These aren't 5 questions brands needs to answer. These are 5 questions every startup needs to answer. These are 5 questions every security team needs to answer. These are 5 questions if you're doing something that's providing a service or product to somebody else. Internally, externally, or in between, you need to think about these questions. And here's what I love is the first one. Are you thinking about customer journeys rather than just touch points? We've talked about this on this program. I never felt comfortable. Paul, how do you feel about being part of a funnel? You could enter at the top, we'll squeeze you down and spit you out at the bottom. Is that exciting to you?
Yeah.
The customer funnel? What I've realized is that language never set right with me. And what I've realized is I don't like the concept of the funnel. What I'm much happier with is the recognition that customers are on a journey, and no two journeys are alike. And then you sit there as a marketer and you're like, what? What this is talking about, which I love, is do you understand that journey? Do you understand what it's like before they're even aware of the problem that you're trying to solve? All the way through to the decision to spend with you or not. Are you just looking at touch points or are you looking at the journey? Do you understand the journey? And I'm going to add, do you understand the language? Do you understand their emotion? Do you understand what it's like to be in that spot? And I have to tell you, woefully, people don't do it. I think it's good. And think about what we just talked about with Ronnie and other stuff. Customer journeys. What's it like when somebody engages with you on the security team? What's it like if somebody calls the number that you gave them on the security awareness hotline? You're a startup. I get it. You're flying hard and fast. When somebody calls, do you call back right away? How does that work? How many times, and I've been guilty of this too, you don't respond right away and you intend to, but then you kind of forget, right? So that's the first question. The second question that they had was, how useful is your data? This is the must-ask question, especially if you're in security today, because I cannot tell you how many times I'll go to a security team and they'll say, "Oh, we got a dashboard, and here, look at this. These are the 10 servers." And Paul, you and I've talked about this. And there's 5,000 critical vulnerabilities, right? This is the world you came from. And I would say, awesome, critical, what does that mean? Well, they're critical. Okay. To whom? To the business? I don't know.
I think what you're getting at is why are they critical?
Yeah.
And that's the question.
And what do I need to do about it?
Yeah. And that's the follow-on question, right? Those are all very hard questions to answer.
And there's lots of easy questions. Yeah.
There's lots of answers to those. And it's really, there's tools to help. It's one of those things in security that we talk about all the time. And it's hard, right? Because there's a lot of manual effort involved in identifying your systems, identifying who owns them, what data's on them, how critical is that data, what classifies sensitive data, what compensating controls you have in place. All those factors play into, well, okay, so how critical is that event? I don't know. That's hard. I think it's one of the things we struggle with today as an industry. And I think a lot of startups struggle with messaging on that front as to how they can help as well because of that kind of misunderstanding about some of the fundamentals you need to have to take advantage of some of the tools.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think just asking that question, like how useful is your data? I got to tell you, I'm going to co-opt that question and use it more often. I've always tried to be more elegant about it. Like, and how do you know? And what does it do? No, just useful. Just do you get utility from it? Yes or no? And so it goes, oh, it's great. You go, cool. How? Why? Right? You're going to follow up with it. But I like it. I think it's a good question. I mean, data is good, but you'll hear that a lot. Well, we're data driven. Great. What data? Right? Because if you can't make a good decision on crappy data. Well, you can make a good decision on crappy data, but question 3, do you truly understand why your customers are doing what they're doing? That one, you got to unpack that one. You got to think about it. Do you truly understand why your customers are doing what they're doing? Are they doing it because it's the best option? Are they doing it because it's the option that sucks the least? Do they even know why they're doing it? This is what we run into a lot in security.
I think a lot of people get into a habit of just doing things the way they always did things.
That's right.
And they don't know they have a problem until some other solution comes about.
That's exactly right. And so if you know that, then you can change those communications. How relevant are your communications interactions? We just did a whole interview on that. Do you have the right people on your team and the processes and guidelines to support them? Yep. So I think it's a great read. This is the stuff that comes out of McKinsey. You can even download it as a PDF. And this was one of the ones that I read and I went, wow, those are good questions. Now I like questions. I like good questions, so that's no real surprise. This next one I put in, it's actually the one surprising thing, but I'm not actually convinced that it's that surprising. But here's the point I really wanted to make. It's called 3 essential and 1 surprising components of a successful sales strategy. Here's the one that matters. Paul, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Let's do it differently. You and I talk to startups, and a lot of times, right? What problem do you solve? Great. What value do you create? Oh, blah, 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 blah. Maybe they get it right. Maybe they don't. Most don't. Okay, cool. Who's your ideal customer? Who's the market? Who do you want to do? And I find out people don't know it.
Yeah, I almost feel like that's the question which people have the kind of lamest answers to be honest with you. And I hate to pick on anyone like that. And it can be a difficult question. And sometimes you don't know who your target market is until you start bringing your product to market and testing it out. In fact, I think oftentimes that's how products do come to market. But I'm amazed how products outside of security are successful, like once they find that fit. And
bingo. And
that to me is like, I'm just amazed. So I've been watching that show, $1 Million Genius, right? And 2 kind of interesting examples. One, the guy made a ball that when you throw it the water, it bounces off the water, right? Like there's lots of fitness ball, all kinds of these things on the market, but he was like, none of them really bounce off the water the way I want. And if you've ever like thrown a frisbee in the water, usually when it hits the water, it kind of sinks, right? So he developed a product and he said, well, what's my ideal market? And he started looking around the globe and said, well, I'm bringing this to market just as summertime is starting in Australia. And he bought like a couple of thousand of these balls and got an order for like 150,000 because he found that. I was like, wow, like there's some luck involved in that, first of all, right? He just found that market and it exploded. The other one that I find interesting is the George Foreman. Do you have a George Foreman grill, Michael?
I did at one point.
Yeah.
I have somebody else's version of it, but I did at one point have an actual George Foreman grill.
So the inventor of the George Foreman grill was turned down by everyone because everyone's like, no one's going to want that. Right? It kind of reminded me of the personal computers back in the day. Everyone was like, no one's going to want a computer in their home. You're crazy. No one's going to want a George Foreman grill. And this was before he had George Foreman behind it, which it's interesting. I don't think that really has parallels in security. But everyone told him no. One person took a chance. And it turns out that not everyone wants to go out on their grill all the time, especially in the winter or what have you. And they want something easy and they want something healthy. And he hit a really kind of niche market of people that, again, going back to my previous point, Michael, didn't understand that they had a problem and how easy it could be to get a healthier meal. Because the whole thing with the George Foreman grill is the grease drips off, right? That kind of thing. So and it took off. But how many people told him no? It was almost a dozen before he found someone to support him in his efforts. So being persistent in sales is probably the number one tip to talk about essential components of a successful sales strategy. You got persistence is the underlying driver.
And I think there's a nuance between being persistent and being annoying.
Yeah.
And I think that's where security has a lot of problems. I just keep calling you and saying the same thing and calling you and calling you and calling you and calling you and calling you. That's not persistent. No. But here's what happened. Somebody read a Zig Ziglar book. They heard the story about the boy who showed up for work every day. He didn't have a job yet, but he showed up every day. He got up, he combed his hair, he brushed his teeth, he got the paper, he tucked it under his arm, he put on his best suit, and he sat there. And they said, "What are you here for?" And he said, "I'm here for a job." And he did that every day. And after 6 months, they realized that someone that determined should have that. And so all of a sudden, we're like, you just call them every day. They're busy. They didn't listen. No. What you're saying is, if you believe in an idea, there's a fit, you've got to be persistent to find it, to look for it, to figure it out. There's a secondary part to this, and this is why I shared this. Who's not a fit? It's fascinating to me the number of times that somebody will go through whoever their ideal candidate is, and I'll say, well, cool, who's not? Who doesn't fit? Well, no, we could, that's right. Shark Tank. We can work with everybody. No, you can't. Yeah, okay, fine. You can. Is it profitable? What's it, right? Go back to the things we typically talk about here with the startup. What is your cost of goods sold? What are your unit economics look like? Can you do this one thing for 10 different people? Sure. Is it essentially a one-off opportunity every time? Yeah, well, I'm not going to argue that that's actually really good for you. Where's your economy of scale? Where do you get these things to work differently? How do you pull those things together? And what I find that's fascinating is, so go back to sales and go back to consistency. And let's go back to the last article where we said, how useful is your data? Most people in even startups, if they're a certain size, they use Salesforce. We at some point maybe should do a CRM show. I have been through a lot of CRMs and finally gave up on it again. But the point is, Salesforce done right, and I'm not saying it's easy, gives you a lot of detail around how many calls does it take, how long from first contact to purchase order, or first contact to demo to PO to sale to whatever. At some point, you need to know who doesn't fit. At some point, it's not about necessarily qualifying the lead as much as it's disqualifying the lead. Sometimes when people tell you they don't fit, they don't fit. And I think I've mentioned this on the program before, but there are, I'll name names. You go to HubSpot. HubSpot puts out great content. HubSpot, if you're not familiar with HubSpot, their whole idea is marketing automation, inbound sales marketing automation. So the idea is I've got something, and so I've created just an absolute plethora of information. I like that word plethora. I've created a plethora of information, make it available on my website, and now I can track you. And when you sign up for something, then I send you an automated email and I do a sequence and everything else. HubSpot is great. They're expensive, so they're not a good fit for my business. But they put out good content, and I'm happy to review it. And so I'll sign up, I'll review it. And then about, I don't know, I'm sure I could figure out the schedule. I'll get an email and I'll get a phone call. Hey, it's Bell over at HubSpot. I saw you recently downloaded X, Y, and Z. I took a look at your website. I've got some suggestions I'd love to share with you. No obligation. Talk more about maybe how HubSpot might be a good fit for you. And what I found actually is HubSpot's really good at this. And so here's what I do. I write back and I say, I know what it's like to be in the grind. Here's my situation. I have evaluated your stuff. I think it's great. I'm not a fit right now, and I don't foresee being a fit for X amount of time. If you'd like to contact me again in 6 months, I'll update you, and if not, I completely understand. Every time I've done that, they've come back and said, wow, thanks. That's awesome. And you know what? They've honored it. And Paul, some of them have followed back up 6 months later. And so what I found then is that when you're looking at your sales strategy, if someone tells you that they're not a good fit, you either have to take them at face value, or you have to say, okay, why not? I mean, it could just be that they're BSing you because they want an objection. It could be an objection, but that's the thing. So what I always look at is, are there people who aren't a good candidate? Some options. They don't actually have the purchasing authority for what it is that you're trying to do. The problem that you're trying to solve is a little more nuanced than what they're able to solve. Like you can start to go through it. That maybe what you'll find, by the way, they have the money for your solution to actually work. They have to have a certain level of influence in the organization, right? I call it, they have to be able to influence change. Well, they don't have the ability to influence the change. They can pay your bills, but you're not going to be successful, because it's only going to be successful if this, and this happens. If you know those things, you can ask those questions. And does it mean then that you can't work with those other people? No. Here's what it means bluntly. You have to make a choice. If somebody who doesn't fit your profile wants to work with you, you either have to price that in accordingly and be upfront about it, or, you move on. And then here's the really fun thing that took me a freaking long time to figure out. When you get down to your one thing, you know who your ideal is, you know who your disqualified, at least what your disqualifiers are. Once you get that really fleshed out, and we'll call it a journey, right? Not a funnel, and you've figured out how that works, you can add more later. You can expand the team later. It's all about conservation of resources and intensity of focus on one thing, and you get where you need to be. Last one, because I know we got a ton of stuff to get into. What can B2B learn from B2C post-purchase frustrations? You can see the theme of the week. This was fun. I didn't actually get through the download yet, the study that it put there, but here you go. A study by Monetate found that return customers spend almost twice as much more money than new visitors online, but account for less than half of all e-commerce sessions. That means return customers are very valuable. The problem is they aren't treated that way. Now, what's interesting is this basically goes on to talk about the fact that they've seen these trends in the B2C world for a while, and they're seeing them now in the B2B world. And was there anything that we learned? Could marketing play a difference? And if you remember, you and I have had this conversation. I've talked about working with power utilities, and I remember I got to meet with their marketing folks, and I said, guys, you're a power utility, right? Yes. So you guys, and they were producers, distributors, right? So they both generated the power, and they were the ones who made sure it got to your house. Yes. I said, so if I'm understanding this right, I don't have a choice. This is where my house is located, and you're the power person, and I have to pay for it, right? And I said, yep. Can you guys explain to me why you're engaging in marketing then? Because I really don't understand it.
I can answer that, I think. Can I guess?
Good.
So I've always thought this was really interesting. The power company is one of the few industries in the world that wants you to consume less of their products. And typically their marketing efforts are for consumers so that they use less of their products, which is really backwards.
It's also to validate your decision. I know you didn't have a decision. They want you to feel good about the fact that you didn't have a decision and that you're still okay and that you're in good hands. Now, if we go deeper into it, does it have to deal then with making sure that they lower complaints and they don't piss off the regulators? Yeah, probably. But if you go look, and I want to say it was BMW's, probably Mercedes, or somebody else, and this is a long time, so I don't have the study to cite, but it was some large amount of their advertising was aimed at current customers. It was reinforcing your decision, reinforcing the status, reinforcing that you, the BMW owner, you're different. And that's awesome. Now, did that appeal to new buyers? Yeah, sure. Was it designed for new buyers? No, because they figured it out. And I think that's the interesting thing. A lot of times in the startups, we're so excited about putting in our funnels or journeys, and I got to get the lead generation out there, and I got to get new leads. How are you doing with your current customers? Are they happy? Are you happy? Are they profitable? Are things going well? Are you creating value for them? What else can you do for them? They already know you. They already trust you. You're already in the billing system. Start there. So I wanted to point that out. And then so it says like, can marketing make it better? And there's, does B2B, does B2B actually, give me your take on this. Does B2B face the same challenges? And there's a quote. So can B2B marketers learn from the failings of B2C retailers? It's actually a lot easier, at least for subscription and hosted services. Customer signs up, you track how they're using it, which means you can tell if they're spending a lot of time in a particular area. If they're doing something one way they could do easier, you can tell if they're using it at all, and therefore you can proactively engage with customers to ensure that they've adopted what's worked best for them. And I think what they're going to then say is the inertia of B2B is that you're only working with like one buyer, one PO. There's probably a line item for you can continue. You agree? I mean, based on your experience in the industry and looking at that?
Yeah, and I just thinking about this article, I think I've got kind of a good summary, and I want to get your take on it. So in security, it means something if someone else is using a security product and it's working for them, right? And I think a lot of us in security, we think we're a special flower, and even if we're in the same industry, I mean, just because that solution's working for them doesn't really mean it's working for us, but good to know that they're happy with it. However, when the reverse happens, when one of your peers says, yeah, we had this solution and it didn't work for us and we got rid of it in favor of something else, that carries a tremendous amount of weight. And I think what you said about making sure your current customers are happy is an extremely important lesson for security startups today. Yep.
Yeah, in fact, you know what? Now that you said that, I'm thinking about even B2C. If I go read Amazon reviews, do you read the 5 stars or the 1 stars first?
You read the 1 stars first.
I want to see what people had to say. And I realize some of them got an axe to grind or they're pissed, and so I sort those out. But
I also, a lot of 1-star reviews you see are like, hey, well, we got it and it was DOA. Like, I just I dismiss those because you really didn't experience the product. And I mean, everything has issues.
They shipped it. They said it'd be here Wednesday. It showed up Thursday. 1 star. You suck.
Yeah, but now, like, if 20% of the people said they got it DOA, then that could be a red flag. But 1 or 2, I'm like, of 1,000 reviews, 1 or 2, I'm like, whatever.
All right, it's busy week, busy week.
Yes, a lot of things happening.
Oh my goodness, Paul. I mean, when I pull these, this was a busy week. All right, Symantec acquired Skycure. Symantec acquired Fireglass, both undisclosed amounts. I saw one of them. Somebody pushed an amount around. I can't remember. Here's some of the basics. Skycure, enterprise mobility. Predicts, identifies, protects the data against threats, vulnerabilities, and malware attacks. Fireglass, agentless isolation solution, detects and eliminates ransomware, malware, other phishing threats in real time. Skycure had about $27.5 million in funding, and Fireglass had about $20 million in funding. So, the fact that there's undisclosed amounts, either the numbers will come out later and will be wrong, or this may not have been the best exit for everybody. That said, it might have worked out great, and here's why. Look at those 2 trends. Who is Symantec going after right now?
Yeah, I mean, they're diversifying into mobile.
They're going into mobile. They're malware. Going agentless. They're going after malware. They're going after your new phishing threats. So what have we been saying when we look at other reports industry-wise, not just us on this program, but we've been looking at this saying, okay, well, those are the areas. And one of the things that I've really gotten tuned into is when you're Symantec, your R&D budget, I don't even care if you tell me it's $1 billion. It doesn't matter. You don't have R&D anymore. You do. Mm-hmm. I know someone's pissed right now. No, what you do is you start looking for other people who can build stuff. And so, you and I have interviewed enough really intelligent startup founders on this program that have started to say, if I build a point solution that could work with something like a Symantec, and typically what I'll hear them say is, it can work with Symantec or maybe Trend Micro. Or, IBM, maybe HP, right? So they're looking at the freaking giants, and they're figuring out how they can create something that can get bought. And what we know is that you're typically going to see a multiple of, 5 to 6 multiple on that sort of an acquisition. So the undisclosed amount could actually be because Symantec is on a buying spree and they don't want to signal their pricing multiples. It could be that this is just the timing of the deals, and I didn't dig deep enough and get the details. It could be it wasn't a great buy, and or however it works out. But one of the other things that I've been paying attention to and tracking now for almost a year is there will come a point in the marketplace where the big boys and the big girls are going to start buying up the small competition to solve the problems that their customer base wants. So if you're now that unicorn, I don't care how much money you have, you've got to go now compete against Symantec. They're already embedded. They've just got to figure out how to keep current customers happy. And, even if somebody's bitching about it, ask them how often they're actually ripping and replacing, because that's expensive. So I thought that's interesting. All right, ZeroFOX, $40 million. Oh, I didn't grab the series number. I'm so sorry. ZeroFOX, social media security, asset protection, threat intelligence. So they're looking at the social media side of stuff. They're putting it together. I've come across them. I wrote about them before. I've seen a demo. It's kind of interesting stuff. I liked it.
How does it protect social media stuff? I'm just curious.
I knew you were going to ask that. I should have just shut my mouth. I feel okay. You know what? I don't remember, Paul. I'm sorry.
No,
you know what? Why don't we reach out, get them on the show? They'll explain it to us. I remember coming away thinking, "Oh, that's pretty slick." So you talk about stuff, right? I have a favorable impression that I'd at least go take a look at them. But if I now looking at this and go into the Wayback Brain machine and say, what problem do they solve and how? Yeah. You got me.
No worries.
Deep Instinct. Endpoint security software. $32 million Series B. That's huge. Series B. This is an insanely crowded space. I mean, the only way that they can compete. I mean, I predict if they continue, we'll see a equal or larger raise in the next year. Most of the other endpoint protection programs, they're all at 100 million, 200 million in funding at this point. You've got 32, maybe 50 total. Nah, you got to step up your game. Have you come across Deep Instinct? Are they doing something different?
I haven't, and that's the challenge in marketing for endpoint protection companies today. Is how do you distinctly say what you do different and or better than anyone else? And I don't get that from visiting it. It's often difficult to figure out.
Flashpoint, early interview on the show. Lots of great information we got from them. So congratulations, Flashpoint, to Josh and company. $28 million Series C. It's good. It's a good raise. It's a good series. I have not talked to them to find out what their plans were. They've taken about $43 million in funding over 3 rounds since 2015, and we talked to them about their pivot to business risk intelligence. And I'm spending a lot of time working with startups in and around that space, looking at risk and looking at intelligence, looking at cyber insurance, looking at
props to Jennifer too. Flashpoint is a business risk intelligence platform that enables enterprises to protect their data from spear phishing and credential theft. Brilliant. I mean, in terms of describing your company in a sentence, you go, Jennifer. Nailed it. Nailed it.
And Jen's a good friend, right? We've both known her a long time, and she's somebody I go to a lot for advice, and so it was great to see this. Knock Labs. All right, you got to explain this to me if you've come across them. Online authentication platform, enterprises to secure internal and consumer-facing infrastructure. So I think that part might be interesting. I've not really deployed a lot of authentication stuff in recent years, so I always know that a lot of the companies I worked with either had their internal one or their external one, like their customer-facing versus their employee-facing. But here's the thing. They only took on an $8 million round. And when I went and looked at it, like the rounds are smaller. So typically what we see is they do a round and then the rounds get bigger, right? Because you're trying to scale, you're trying to get bigger, trying to get bigger, trying to get bigger. I've not come across them, and I was kind of surprised that I hadn't heard of them. And then I was kind of surprised that they had a smaller round. Now, there is another explanation. They're not diluting themselves. They needed more money, but instead of taking one of these gargantuan rounds, that they actually have a disciplined team, a good plan, they're executing against it, and they only needed $8 million. So they didn't go take $12 million. They took $8 million. They didn't dilute themselves, but they got what they needed in order to get to whatever their next step is. Have you come across Knock?
No, but it sounds like they're providing an authentication kind of back end for example, like LastPass on my Android phone can say, hey, use the fingerprint reader and use it as a factor in your authentication to LastPass. Sounds like they're integrating that so that you can have a unified biometrics experience and authentication experience across all your applications, internal and external, which is interesting.
Oh, that's interesting. So then there may be more at play here too in terms of relationships and partnerships and other type of stuff that
That'd be
they
my
really did
guess.
need a big raise. Yeah.
That'd be my guess.
If you're watching a program, Knock Knock Labs, if you know them, love an introduction, or if you're using it or you've come across it, shoot me a note. And it's Michael at securitycatalyst.com. Like, that's the easiest way to get me. Or securityweekly.net, Michael at securityweekly.net. Just either one, hit me, and I'll see it, and we'll follow up and I'll figure it out. RiskLens, $5 million Series A. This is another area I'm spending a lot of time. So this is a company that they're trying to help you figure out how to better get a handle on your risk. $5 million Series A. I mean, that's a big raise. That's good. And then I looked them up because it was kind of interesting. They're at 6.6 million over 3 rounds. They took like a $1.5 million seed and then like a $500,000 equity round. So it looked like one of those grants or awards. I feel like we probably even covered it. I just kind of forgot it. They're going to be the first of many, and this is an area where you're going to start seeing more. You're going to see more Series A's and et cetera coming as we go down the road. The one I wanted to take a look at, and that link, I didn't make it set up as a link. You go to Entropy. This confused me when I read it. You'll see I didn't put an arrow link here. I'm going to go to the website right now, Paul. Go to the website, entropy.com. If you're listening at home but you're by a computer, entrupy.com. Please tell me what the hell they do. Because what's fascinating about this is when it came across, and I can't remember where I got it, they're a New York-based provider of high-end luxury goods authentication as a service, a SaaS. And so I went, well, okay, it's got the word authentication. Like, what is it? And fraud, like, okay, it's a stretch. But you go to their website, and in fact, I think it just clicked. I think I just got what they do.
Yeah, so you take this device, you put it over your item that you bought, and it reaches out to the cloud and uses artificial intelligence algorithms to analyze the images and tells you if your Louis Vuitton bag is a real or it's a fake.
Okay, there you go. All right. You know what? I take it back then. I get what they do now. But when you say, like, what problem do we solve? I went to authentication as authentication.
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
this is, like Domain Tools had a study that they did where they looked at domains and basically how many luxury brands have knockoff domains that are selling knockoff products. It's a huge percentage. I mean, any given luxury brand can have something like 10 to 15,000 domains that are selling their products. So yeah, knockoff products are, and as we see in the startup world, knockoff products are a huge thing. Like the Slanket, I never even knew that the original person who invented the Snuggie, as we know it, he couldn't pull a patent on it, and he basically created a blanket with sleeves, and he called it a Slanket. And he knew as soon as it hit the market that people were going to rip him off. So he did the strategy for his business in accordance with that, and is still successful today. Doesn't have a huge market share, but has enough market share to have a successful business. So it is a huge problem that they're addressing. Okay,
so that's interesting then. So then I take my confusion away. Interesting story of the week. So here's what's interesting, right? Just comes across Darktrace raised a $75 million Series D. So I looked at it and go, oh, okay, cool. I mentioned this before. I really love his analysis. So I follow Adam Lashinsky at Fortune. He's got like a daily notebook and he puts it out. And so this is a direct quote from him. Darktrace was almost valued at $1 billion, but by taking the $75 million Series D, it was privately valued at $825 million, as opposed to the billion to get you to that unicorn startup. So, like when we look at these rounds sometimes then have relevance not just towards how much money did you need, but what can you set your valuation at? And is this the signal that you're real, that you're ready for an IPO, that you're whatever? So is it Darktrace? I have not personally come across them. Have you, Paul? Have you seen them? Work with them?
Yeah, there was some really smart math people that built their artificial intelligence machine learning algorithms. One of them passed away, but their obviously technology continues. I believe they have patents in the space. It's basically analyzing behavior. It does network. I believe it does endpoint as well. and basically makes the determination as to what is bad behavior and what is not. The customers I've spoken with, most have really great stories, some not so much. I think it's one of those things, it's not the solution for everyone. But Darktrace is a pretty big player in the market today in that kind of almost like hunt teaming space. Same space that we're in offensive countermeasures, which is why I know a little about them.
So I got this is funny. I got like 2 emails in the same day. High Trust raised $36 million in Series E. And what was interesting was the Data Gravity one. So the story is High Trust acquired Data Gravity. The way it came across was Data Gravity was acquired by High Trust. So the first time I read it, it was like High Trust raised $36 million and then they got acquired? What? No. High Trust raised $36 million in a Series E, and essentially in the same amount of time, the same time span, they acquired Data Gravity for an undisclosed amount. High Trust has raised about $160 million in funding over 6 rounds. Data Gravity had raised at least $92 million in funding since 2012. Some of the numbers on Owler looked a little maybe less than accurate. So, this to me definitely feels like Data Gravity, and I don't have the details. I know the names. I didn't have a lot of insight or interaction with either of these companies.
Yeah.
But that feels like fire sale, right?
Yeah, well, it probably, and I think it's a good move for High Trust. I don't know High Trust at all until I read this article, to be honest with you. Provides hybrid cloud infrastructure, virtualization, compliance, and access control solutions. So, I mean, they're helping you with security management. What they did was they bought Data Gravity, who had technology that lets you make sense out of unstructured data. So they basically bought a chunk of R&D with their Series E round to help them with their products, is what it sounds like to me. Data Gravity actually is a really good solution for data analytics in that sense.
I got it. All right, so that's our week. We got through it. On the updates front, I'm finding that Straight Talk is really it's really good on a personal level. It's good on a business level. I'm using it. I'm refining it, and actively now at that stage where I'm like, okay, I've got it. I've figured out a model that works. I've figured out, kind of where I fit, and I'm enjoying conversations. And frankly, I'm at the point where I need to do better at prospecting. It's time for me to go rethink my journey, right? Not a funnel, my journey for people. So I'm enjoying the conversations. I'm at the point now, Paul, where people are reaching out to me to talk about it. They've heard about it, so hopefully they're hearing good things. They seem to be, because they're calling. And what's changed for me is it's no longer I'm not trying to sell anybody. And it's been a really interesting way to think about it. If you call me, I'm really just interested in your situation. I'm interested in talking about where and how you're seeing friction, and or what problem you're trying to solve. I'm curious, and I've created a rubric, and it's been really interesting to share that with people. And what I find though is that if I can establish value in the short run, they'll say, well, what would it be like to work with you? I've simplified my model. You give me 5 to 10 minutes, I can explain it to you, and then say, right, qualifying questions. Would this type of thing work in your environment? How do you typically handle things like this? I find it works best in this condition, in this condition, in this condition. Do you have one of those conditions? And I've had people that say, yeah, no, not really. So, okay, cool. Well, let's keep in touch. I don't feel like I'm selling. I feel like I'm helping people solve a problem that's common, but I've learned that while I might be able to apply this to a broad range of people, my sweet spot is early stage security startups and high performance innovative teams in the enterprises. But they're a secondary. I find that I still get a lot of those calls, and they have a really cool overlap with slightly different needs. So it's been fun. And so now I'm starting to realize too that I've got a couple long-term clients, and that's really letting me figure things out and put a groove together. So now I'm kind of looking at how to balance out my portfolio so that I can work with some really good high performance teams and make a big difference for them, and still meet some new people. All right, so it's kind of sorting it all out, and I'm at that point where I'm feeling antsy. Like, okay, it's time to get some stuff done. It's time to get some things updated on the Straight Talk framework. It's time to get the website updated. It's time to tell a better story. It's time to go get a couple really good clients, and then just kind of get into that groove until it's time to do something else. So it's I like to say I've got some calm anxiety right now. Mm-hmm. So it's been good.
Nice.
How about you, man?
We're focusing on pushing development forward this summer and working with some beta customers. So we're still in only working with a select set of customers at the moment and pushing the product forward. So, which is
Smart.
why we won't have a huge presence at Black Hat. However, I will be interviewing lots of companies at Black Hat, getting updates from them, spending some time in the innovation summit theater kind of thing, talking with other startups. And of course, we remain highly confident in our product. We're just not ready to take it out to the masses just yet. That'll be coming soon. So Black Hat will be interesting this year, for sure.
I look forward to seeing what you come up with. This is fantastic stuff, brother.
Cool. Well, that concludes this edition of Startup Security Weekly. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.